What's up, guys? Back for yet another live stream on Hurricane Florence as we've got some more information regarding this Category 4 major hurricane. I'll let more people get on board before we start the show. It's going to be another quick one, less than an hour, but I've got some information that I think needs to be shared for those that are going to ride out the storm. I don't know the exact location of the landfall per se. It's going to be, I'm pretty sure, in the North Carolina. South Carolina maybe, but it looks like to me it might go north just a little bit into the Outer Banks area. And that's just what a couple, maybe 3 models are starting to show, but either way, it's a Category 4 storm, and I've been in a Category 4 storm, and the area of impact can be uninhabitable for many weeks to come. That's something that needs to be at least mentioned. I know that firsthand from Hurricane Charlie, and Hurricane Charlie was a small storm. It was a Cat 4 back in 2004, and Punta Gorda, Florida, there were homes along the coast where that storm made landfall that lost the roofs, infrastructure was down, power poles were down, and it was uninhabitable for quite some time, even though it was a very small storm. With this storm here, we're looking at significant storm surge, quite possibly record-setting storm surge. That aspect alone would make the area uninhabitable for quite some time. So just something to consider, guys, if you are thinking about riding out the storm. I know those smaller storms can be fun and sometimes maybe not too much happen, but I don't think that's going to be the case with this one. More than 1 million asked to evacuate as Florence builds to a Cat 4 hurricane. More than 1 million. And in South Carolina, they've come out and said that their shelters in South Carolina can only withstand a Category 3 storm. So if this storm were to turn into South Carolina, they would have to bus people farther inland because the shelters are only able to handle a Category 3 storm. So hopefully, it won't go that direction. It's got to go somewhere, though. Unfortunately, that's the bummer about this thing. But more than 1 million people were ordered to evacuate as a huge stretch of the eastern U.S. coastline as Hurricane Florence rapidly intensified to a extremely dangerous Category 4. And these storms are. I've been in one firsthand, and I felt the effects 150 miles inland. I knew people in the Punta Gorda area where that thing made landfall, and a gentleman had a home much like the one you're looking at in this picture. And this picture's from Bermuda today. This thing was hundreds of miles south of Bermuda, and look at the waves it kicked up and the winds. That picture's from Bermuda as Hurricane Florence churned to the south of the island. Big waves and high winds hundreds of miles away. So in this storm, wherever it does make landfall, we're going to take a look at some options, some possibilities here in a few minutes of where I think it might make landfall and the possible storm surge that could go inland for several hundred yards. In some cases, it just depends on where it makes landfall. That's a big if where it makes landfall. But either way, the Cat 4 winds. Let me show you something here real quick. Cat 4 winds. This is the Saffir-Simpson, by the way. Category 4. Catastrophic damage will occur. These are winds of 130 to 156. And I personally think it may reach Cat 5 for at least 12 hours, maybe longer. I don't think it'll make landfall as a Cat 5. I just think the conditions tomorrow, especially tomorrow afternoon, right now it's encountering, believe it or not, a little bit of wind shear. So it's not, or it shouldn't, go to Cat 5 tonight, but I think tomorrow it will have smooth sailing as far as wind shear and warm waters all the way to the coastline. So back to Category 4 at the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Well-built framed homes can sustain severe damage with loss of most of the roof structure, and that's true. People in Punta Gorda had clay tile roofs that came off during Hurricane Charlie. And Hurricane Charlie only had an eye wall that was about 10 miles wide. But in that path, trust you me, it took up trees, took off roofs. It did some major damage, 150 miles inland. Most trees will be snapped or uprooted and power poles downed. Fallen trees and power poles will isolate residential areas. Power outages will last for weeks, possibly months. Most of the area of the direct impact will be uninhabitable for weeks. And that's what the East Coast is looking at right now in the North Carolina, South Carolina area. If this thing continues on its track, then you're looking at those types of scenarios, quite possibly. See, I had a model running here. I think it's right here. This is the storm right now as I do this video. And it's got a very well-defined eye wall. It does look like it might be involved in a little wind shear. And what wind shear does to these storms, it kind of just throws a wrench in things. Let me show you what the wind shear is actually doing right now, because it is in some wind shear and it's important. Wind shear determines the strength of these storms. So wind shear can tone them down a little bit. And let me show you what I'm talking about. If I can find the wind shear here real quick, I'll show you. All right, here we go. We're getting close. All right. Wind shear. Florence was supposed to have smooth sailing all the way to the coast without wind shear, but that's not the case. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is Florence's current position right now. Cat 4, moving west slightly to the north now. But I'm going to show you wind shear that it's encountering, and that's why the eye wall has got a little bit of a wobble in it. See that wobble right there? That's usually a sign of wind shear or a eye wall replacement cycle. One of the two. In this case, wind shear. See the red lines? The red lines are high wind shear. And those conditions, even though they're only going to be temporary, are unfavorable for hurricanes or tropical storms. That's why you see that eye wall changing shape. Right there. It's changing shape because of that red line. That red line is high wind shear. Now, once it passes that, probably here in the next 2 hours, it's not going to last very long. So it's not going to have a long duration impact on the storm. However, it is having an impact on it right now. And if there were wind shear out in front of it for any great length of time, then it would cause the storm to start to disassemble. In some cases, maybe come down to a Cat 2, Cat 3, but not completely. That's a big, strong storm, and that's not a whole lot of wind shear. But it is enough right there to throw a wrench in its cycle. Right there, you can see that eye wall. Just right there. It's no longer perfectly symmetrical like it was or it has been for the past few hours, but it's not going to last long. And it's going to run into a little bit of wind shear up here, but not much. So that could be the only thing keeping this from becoming a temporary Category 5. However, it's still going to make landfall, and that's been predicted for quite some time as a Category 4 because there's just not enough wind shear to slow this thing down. The warm waters are going to give this thing enough force to get through the wind shear, or at least it should. But there is a little bit of wind shear there that's going to keep this thing from probably getting any stronger than a Category 4. The red lines are the wind shear. Green is excellent. It's conducive for tropical storms. And once it gets past this wind shear, then it's got green, which is favorable conditions all the way to the coast. So look for this thing to make landfall at least as a Cat 4. Let me get the wind shear off of there. There you go. So a Category 4 storm making landfall is catastrophic. So you guys need to leave the area. Let me show you where I'm thinking this thing is going to make impact. And it's based off of, actually, let's go back to that model there just real quick. I want to show you something else. Here's why I think it may go north just a little bit. Let me show you these models, and hopefully you'll be able to see them. This is the model right now. It's kind of a collection of all of the models, and that's how it arrives at its location right there in southeast central North Carolina, just in the Wright Field Beach area. Okay, here's one cone. See how they're kind of going to the north? Okay, I'm going to show you a couple more. So you've got 1, 2, 3. You got 1, 2, 3 going to the north. Watch this. There's 2 more going to the north. Not north of North Carolina, but up into the Outer Banks area. Right into this area here. Surf City. This is where it's looking at, like right now. Surf City. I mean, this area would be hit with some extremely high winds. Topsail Beach. Hampstead, Bay Shore. Myrtle Grove. Wrightsville Beach, Carolina Beach, all of these areas through here. Some areas, some significant storm surge, like for instance, if it were to hit in this area, Sneed's Ferry could fill up. Dudley Island could fill up. Harker's Island. But what the models are showing doesn't mean it's going to happen, but what they're showing is a turn from this area here up towards Harker's Island, right in this area. Don't know if it'll materialize or not, but I wanted to share that with you guys. It does show that tomorrow. We'll know tomorrow during the afternoon if it does start to turn just a little bit to the north. But right now, you're looking at right in here. That's where the center of the cone's at pretty much. But guys, a Cat 4 storm in this area, honestly, I know some of these homes are vacation homes and whatnot, but anybody that lives in that area, I know from firsthand experience, after being in a Cat 4 hurricane, the immediate area where it makes landfall is generally uninhabitable for quite some time. And Hurricane Charlie did not have that much storm surge, and it really didn't have that much water. It was a very strong wind storm with a very small eye wall. So there have been over 1 million people asked to evacuate from here for good reason. Very good reason. But I understand people not wanting to evacuate. I get it, you know. You don't want to leave your home and your belongings, and especially if you have farm and farm animals to tend to. I totally get it. But this here could become unsafe pretty quickly. In fact, very quickly. You have 130 to 150 mile an hour sustained winds. It's going to start taking out structures, or at least roofs. So you got to be very careful with this storm. And I wanted to show you guys the wind shear, how it's kind of messing with the eye wall just a little bit right now, not too much. That could affect the storm if more wind shear does come into play. Right now it doesn't look like it's going to. There is a little bit of wind shear messing with the storm, but not a whole lot. North Topsail Beach. This area here should be on high alert. If there's anybody there, you need to consider moving way inland. Holly Range. This area here could see storm surge. Just looking at the possibilities here, this area here could see storm surge. I think we've already talked about that. Dudley Island. Water could be filling up in there very, very quickly. And a lot of it. And sometimes storm surge can go in many miles, in fact. This area here could see storm surge. Definitely. Storm surge in this area for sure if it continues on its same track, especially if it moves north. This entire area could see tremendous flooding. And this is another area too that could potentially be uninhabitable for quite a while. I mean, you're talking about a huge mess that would have to be cleaned up after a Cat 4 impact. I've seen it firsthand, and it is nothing nice. It is nothing nice, trust me. So, if anybody's thinking about riding this storm out, make sure you have tons of provisions that are going to last you a long time, that aren't going to be wet and damaged by floodwaters if you're going to stay along this coast. I'm just letting you know from experience. I think most people have been evacuated out of here today. This was a mandatory evacuation area, if I'm not mistaken. And these homes in this area, I know a lot of them are vacation homes and all that, but you know, the thing of the day, or at the end of the day, they belong to somebody, and more than likely they're going to sustain heavy damage from a Cat 4 hurricane. I saw block-built homes with tile roofs taken completely off from Hurricane Charlie. I mean, it didn't play, and it was a smaller storm than this one, much smaller. Could see some storm surge in this area here too. Beacon Island. All of that. You can see storm surge way back in here. That's definitely a possibility. And in this area right here. Jacksonville. You can see storm surge in that area too. Most definitely. That is a very high probability of storm surge in this area. In the area of Jacksonville, Camp Lejeune. If it continues on its same track, you're going to see storm surge. It's almost impossible not to. High winds, winds of 130, 140, just depends. That track right in there, guys. So if you're in there and you're thinking about riding that out, you've got a couple of days to maybe reconsider. And if I were you, I would reconsider, because a Cat 4 is nothing to mess with. Nothing to mess with, trust me. So it will be uninhabitable for quite some time. It's very, very possible. And that's if this thing doesn't gain any more strength. If it maintains a Cat 4, it's going to be uninhabitable for a very long time. If it becomes a Cat 5, then there could be structures completely gone. So we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully it'll just stay a Cat 4. But this is a major storm, and it's one that you definitely have to respect, no doubt. Take another look at this wind shear. See what it looks like now. It may have changed a little bit. Usually they update this quite often. It's going to enter a little bit more wind shear. Looks like tonight and even tomorrow. Still going to maintain a Cat 4, so that's going to keep it from becoming a Cat 5. That wind shear saved the day. See it right there? That's going to keep it from becoming a Cat 5. The warm waters is going to kind of neutralize the wind shear, so to speak, and it'll be able to get through it. So you're looking at a little bit of wind shear, but after that, there's none. It'll maintain a Cat 4 all the way in. Let's get in a little tighter. Remove the wind shear. Remove the track, and you can see the eye wall kind of wobbling a little bit. That's from the wind shear. So it's coming in, guys. Look for a landfall Thursday. At the speed it's going, it could start to affect land overnight in the early morning hours of Thursday into Thursday morning. Hopefully it'll be during the daytime hours and not the nighttime hours. Nighttime landfalls are not a good scenario at all. Just compounds the situation, making it that much more difficult. So we definitely do not want to see a nighttime landfall if we have to see one at all. So I just want to give you guys a quick heads up on the wind shear. There is some out there that's kind of in play right now. It's kind of messing with the eye wall. I don't think it's going to be a game changer though, but there is some wind shear in the environment that is affecting the hurricane. But it's still going to maintain Cat 4, but it may keep it from becoming a Cat 5. There for a while I thought this thing might have a chance at becoming a Cat 5. But I don't think so. It's still going to remain a Cat 4. And a Cat 4, guys, is a very devastating storm that you don't want any part of. You can see right here what it's going to do. So if you're considering riding the storm out, you might want to reconsider, because if it makes landfall as a Cat 4, there's going to be roofs gone, trees uprooted, power poles down, I've seen it firsthand. I've been in a Category 4 storm, and it creates chaos. So you don't want any part of it. If you have a chance to move inland, go stay with a buddy, go stay with another family, a family member, a friend. That would probably be the very best thing to do. Because we don't know that this thing won't increase in strength after it gets through this little bit of wind shear tomorrow. It very well could. This thing was a Cat 4 in 80-degree weather. 80-degree sea surface temperatures and a Cat 4, that's unheard of. But it did it. So this thing's capable of anything. So don't be surprised if it does increase to a Cat 5. I don't think it will because of the wind shear, but don't be surprised if it does. And don't mess with this storm. If you guys are thinking about riding it out, go inland. It's not worth it. You won't have enough provisions. Grocery stores won't be open because there will be no electricity to get gas, get a bottle of water. You won't be able to get anything. And that was one of the things in the communities where my friends lived that lost power for a month. Most of the grocery stores lost power. So they had no way to cool milk, cool frozen foods, anything. They couldn't open for business because they didn't have any POS, point of sales. They couldn't take money. So they couldn't open. And not only that, the only thing they could sell was bread and water, or what they had left prior to the storm. So you won't be able to get any type of provisions if you run out because there won't be anything open. So just go inland where it's safe. And you can get you a cold bottle of water, get you a beer if you want one. You'll be able to get gas, go somewhere where there's not going to be 140-mile-an-hour winds because they do take a toll on the terrain and anything standing in its way. I've seen it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll do another update tomorrow as this storm moves closer and closer to the eastern seaboard of the United States. Hold on just a second. I didn't realize. Oh, I need to thank Brandon, Renee, Brandon 2 or 3 times. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Renee. Just trying to look out for you guys. I know you guys are on the ball. If you're along the East Coast, you know, I'm talking to you people that have never been through a hurricane before. A lot of you guys are veterans. You've been through hurricanes or at least been near them, have experienced them. For you that haven't, you don't want to mess with a Cat 4 hurricane. Trust me. You won't like what it does to your surroundings. So move inland and stay safe. I've been in a Cat 4, I've been in a Cat 2, and I've been in a Cat 1. The Cat 2 and Cat 1, I have to admit, weren't that bad. Because the Cat 4 had already ripped up everything that was intact. And the Cat 2 and Cat 1 went over the same exact area, so it wasn't like it could do much damage, and they didn't have that much rain. Well, the second one did. It had quite a bit of rain, but not that much. The Cat 4 took care of business, and I mean, it tore the heck out of things for miles. So it's not anything to mess with. If you've never experienced a hurricane, you do not want to experience this one, trust me. So thanks, guys, for stopping by. I really appreciate everything you do. And we will do another live stream tomorrow when we have some new information early. I might do this early in the morning. We'll see what the information is. I expect it to still be a Cat 4, but at some point when it pops out of that wind shear, don't be surprised if it goes up to a Category 5. And if it's a Category 5, then everybody needs to vacate the area. And I'm surprised that even anybody's sticking around for a Category 4 landfall. So that's catastrophic damage, guys. You can see it right here. The National Hurricane Center, Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale. Cat 4 is catastrophic damage. You don't want to fool around with that. So if you have a chance to move inland and have a place to go, take full advantage of it. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Have a super day, and be safe out there.